IT Theory LB Grade 10 Handbook. We're going to start with unit 3.5, comparing a computer to a mobile device. Okay, so what is a mobile device? So a mobile device basically is like your smartphone that you have, or any small, classified as being like just a mobile device. If you think of basically any smartphone, let's say it in that retrospect. So what are its capabilities? So a mobile device basically performs many functions of a computer. So on your phone you can browse the internet, you can run basic software programs like Word, Excel. So majority of the programs you run on a mobile device is basically also ran on a computer. Okay, obviously there are some weak points or restrictions of a mobile device, and we'll look into it in a second. Okay, so let's compare quickly the input devices of a mobile device and a desktop. Okay, straight off we've got where I said limitations and stuff is the keyboard. Okay, so with a desktop computer or a laptop, you've got a full-size computer, whereas with a smartphone, you've got a touchscreen, which is normally very small, and you can't really type as fast because of mis-touching a key, and then you have to go back, and it's generally a bit more slower. On a smartphone though, you can plug in a USB on the go, which is basically it. You plug it into your phone, it has a USB on the other end, then you plug in a keyboard and you can type on a full-size keyboard on your phone. Okay, that is again same as desktop. Or you can have a Bluetooth keyboard that can connect to your phone, which also then increase the limitations. Okay, the mouse or the pointing device. Okay, so on a desktop we know we've got a mouse, we can use a touchpad, we can use touchscreen, we can use a stylus, whereas on a smartphone we've got touchscreen and stylus. For those of you who do not know what a stylus is basically a pen, a special pen with like a rubber tip that is used on touchscreens to like basically write or touch on the screen. So it just gives you a bit more precision than just a normal big finger. Okay, next up we've got cameras. Okay, so here a smartphone obviously has a built-in camera, whereas a desktop you need to go purchase a camera. Okay, most of the laptops, we just comparing this to a desktop, not really a laptop, but your laptops, some of your laptops actually have a webcam. Okay, a microphone in a smartphone, again built in, because obviously we make phone calls with our smartphone, so it automatically has a microphone built in. Again, whereas a desktop you need to go purchase an extra either headset or standalone microphone. And then obviously a laptop, again if it has a webcam, then some of the laptops actually have a built-in microphone. Okay, then we get to biometric devices. So what is a biometric device again? A biometric device uses human characteristics to basically gain access or to restrict access to certain information or data. Okay, so biometric devices on desktop actually has to be purchased extra. Where you can see biometric devices on desktops is like at a bank or home affairs, or getting your learner's license at the testing centers. They've got this thumbprint device that you actually have to put your finger on, it scans your fingerprint, and then it basically says, okay, it is who it is, basically. Okay, biometric devices on smartphones though, majority of your new smartphones, it is more the older ones that didn't have the technology, but the more recent devices has either some kind of biometric feature. Like my phone has a fingerprint reader at the back, which obviously unlocks the phone, and as well as the camera basically has a facial recognition software that can, again, using my facial features, my human characteristics, it will then detect it is me that are clicking the unlock button, and my phone will unlock just by looking at my face. Okay. Then the output devices of the two. If we look at a smartphone, normally the screen or monitor size ranges between 3 to 6 inches, and a desktop you can range from 19 to 34, and then it almost becomes a TV screen, but you can range in that sizes. Whereas speakers, again, smartphone, we use it to speak over calls, so obviously a speaker will be built into a smartphone, and desktop speakers has to be purchased extra. Again, if we look at the laptop, the laptops obviously have speakers built into it. Okay, now comparing a storage device of your smartphone versus a desktop. Okay, so the internal storage is obviously a smartphone. There's very little space in a smartphone cover or case to put very big storage equipment or hardware, so obviously it's very limited. Okay, most of the new phones actually come out with really impressive like gigs of storage that you can use, but it still does not even come close to a desktop and the built-in DVDs or SSDs that you can equip your desktop with. So obviously your desktop will have large built-in hard disk drives or SSDs, whereas your smartphone is very small and it's built in NAND chips. Okay. If we look at external storage, so if we've got our desktop, we want to just plug like an external hard drive via USB, we need to go purchase that extra, as well as a smartphone. So a smartphone, I talked about the cable you plug into your charging port, and then it has a USB on the other side. So if I want to add like external storage and not a micro SD but like a USB, I can just plug it in there, and then obviously it is like an external drive for the phone. Okay, whereas an SSD, although there is a built-in slot, you still have to go purchase the SSD, which again makes it also a purchase as an extra. Okay, if we get to CD and DVD drives, if we get to desktop, it is normally built in unless you specify that you do not want it. Otherwise it can be purchased extra if you do not have it into your desktop. And whereas a smartphone, again, there is ways of connecting the USB to the phone, and that also is extra. Okay, because obviously a phone can't read a CD or DVD drive, but with adapters and external CD-ROMs and DVD-ROMs, it is possible to connect the two. Okay, next up we've got processing power of the two. So the CPU in a smartphone, obviously built in, a desktop built in. Okay, desktop, it's a bit more modular. You can upgrade your CPU as long as it fits into your 0 insertion 4 socket, whereas a smartphone, you can't really upgrade your CPU. Okay, also again with the GPU, a smartphone, it's built in, really not modular to upgrade it, whereas in a desktop it can be either built in, which uses the CPU and onboard graphics, or you can purchase a card, a graphics card extra, install it into the PCIe slots on the motherboard, and then obviously it's also modular, so if it breaks you can just replace or upgrade whenever you like. Then getting to RAM, smartphone, again built in, can't really change it, whereas a desktop, although it says built in, we know there is multiple dual inline memory modules or DIMM slots that we can just add RAM modules to it or upgrade as necessary. Okay. Then if we look at the connectivity of these both two devices, so we know our motherboard in the smartphone, again, built-in, desktop, built-in, smartphone, in some cases you can, if it's like water damage, you can put in a new motherboard and stuff like that, but it's much more easy in a desktop to upgrade because it's like DIY. Okay, communication way, a smartphone normally uses GSM, 2G, 3G, 4G, which is our mobile network systems that we can use. Smartphones use Wi-Fi to connect to the internet. We also have a Bluetooth and an NFC. So Bluetooth, we all know Bluetooth. NFC is a near field communication. Okay, so normally that is like if you've got two phones, it has like an NFC chip. If you place those two close enough together, it can use the chips and electromagnetic signals to actually communicate with each other. Okay, if we look at a desktop's communication mediums, okay, we've got Ethernet, which we can plug into it. Okay, so that is normally that cables with a, you call it an RJ45 plug. I can actually quickly just open up another one here. Okay, so Ethernet cable, let me just show you what an Ethernet cable looks like. So Ethernet cable, I think most of you have seen this in your life somewhere, either by the router or switch, or you've got a port on your laptop or PC. So that is one way of connecting your desktop to the internet. Okay, another way is also you can get like a USB. It plugs into the USB slot, and then it actually connects wirelessly via Wi-Fi to a router or switch you have lying around in your house. Another way, you can also purchase a network card, which again slots into your motherboard and then give you the capabilities of either using the Ethernet or LAN, or it can use Wi-Fi VLAN. Okay, the most general ports in phones these days, smartphones, is again you've got some type of USB, so it's either going to be USB-C, micro USB, USB-B, etc. And you can just convert whatever your charger port is, you can convert to USB. Okay. Then you also, I know the new iPhones do not come out with a 3.5mm headphone jack, but most of your smartphones actually come out with it. And basically you get something called a docking station, where you put your phone into that docking station and then you can add like USB etc. to your phone. Okay, whereas on a desktop we know it has many different ports. We get USB, some computers have FireWire, Ethernet, etc. So there's a lot more on a PC. Okay, then Activity 3.5 is a good one to do. Okay, then we get to basic concepts of system software. Okay, so in software we've got two types of software. We have a system software and application software. Okay, system software is a specific type of software that manages the computer device, and this system software is basically your operating system, utility programs, and device drivers. Okay. Whereas if we look at application software, it is basically software that enables you to use the computer to do certain tasks. So an instance of system software would be Microsoft Windows 10, whereas a application software will be Microsoft Word 2016. Okay, so but let's get back to system software. So let's look at an operating system, which is a system software. Okay, so an operating system is basically software that manages the hardware. Okay, software and other applications on a computing device. So that is basically, you need an operating system to run your application software. Okay, because your application software goes onto your operating system. Alright, this operating system has different functions. Okay, the main functions of an operating system is to do disk management. Okay, so it manages the drives installed into the computer. Hardware management, so the managing the interaction between hardware and the software. It gives you a GUI, which is a graphical user interface. So that is basically what we see. Okay, so this nice start button here, Windows Explorer, it's a nice graphical user interface. Okay, self-explanatory. Gives you just a visual interaction between the user and the computer. Then we've got input-output management. So it manages basically the signals coming from an input device and also sending the correct signals to an output device. Sorry, I just want to grab a sip of water here. Okay, then we get to process management. So the system software actually manages the applications and how much of the resources that application can use. Then we get file management. Again, the operating system also manages the storage of files and folders onto the storage device. Okay, then we get memory management. This is again just where the operating system basically manages the data stored on the computing device memory, and once the memory is complete, the process is complete in that memory, then it basically just free up the space in the memory to make space for new instructions to come in. Then we've got storage management, and that's just basically processes used to improve the performance of data storage resources. Okay, so that is all basically the functions of an operating system. Normally you would only learn about 5 of these points, but it is good to know all the importance of an operating system. Okay, then we get to types of operating systems. Okay, the first one is called the standalone operating system. Okay, that means the operating system functions entirely independently from a network, and then it basically, it means like your own laptop or desktop you've got at home, you can put it up without having it connected to a network, and the operating system is basically on the device itself. The next one you get is a network operating system. Okay, that means you've got a central server in the network that is running this operating system, and you've got computers connecting to that server in order to use that computers. Okay, normally the first one is called a fat client, and then the one that uses all the network's resources and stuff is called normally a thin client. Okay, next one we've got an embedded operating system. Okay, so an embedded operating system is just basically designed for a specific purpose. Okay, you get basically embedded operating systems in stuff like smart TVs that can connect to the internet, as maybe a video camera, you can use Wi-Fi and stuff like that. Okay, so it's more basically just embedded onto the device itself. Okay, I see they don't really talk about other types, so I'm just going to mention it here, so it's not noted here, but you get proprietary operating systems and open source software operating systems. Okay, so the difference between these two, the proprietary software is basically like Windows 10. You have to buy a license in order to use the operating system or the program. Okay. So an example, like I said, is Windows 10. You do not buy the software itself, but you only purchase a license that you can use to operate this operating system. Okay, you do not own the software. Whereas if you look at an open source software operating system, one of these can be Linux. I don't know if some of you know that. But it's open source software, and you are provided with the source code. So proprietary, you pay for it, you do not own it, you get a license to use it, and you do not get the source code. Okay, so source code is basically the coding behind the program and how it works, and you can basically, if you know programming and you're a good programmer, you can basically adjust that source code to do whatever you want the program to do. Okay. So that's proprietary, you do not get it. Whereas with open source, you get the source code, so you can actually go change it as you want to. Okay. And it's open source is obviously as well free. Okay. Some advantages of the proprietary is you've got support. So if there's a bug, you know it's going to be fixed. There's someone to hold liable for basically crashing and waiting for system updates and stuff, whereas the open source, normally it's a community that fixes the stuff, so response can be fast or it can be slow, and then obviously you might also get a lot more bugs. Okay, so that is basically just the types of operating systems. Next up, we've got utilities and drivers. Okay, so on an operating system, you also get system software in other types. One is a utility program, next is a device driver. So first off, I'm going to talk about utility programs and what it is. So a utility program is system software that helps a user to analyze, configure, monitor, and maintain their computer. Okay. So most of your operating systems actually have their own set of utilities included. I'm going to check if I can quickly show you a few of these utilities, if my start button works. So let's see. Where's it found again? Windows administrative tools. Okay, let me see. Yes. Okay. I think accessories as well. Okay, not really accessories. I would stick to Windows administrative tools. Okay, so this is basically utilities on your computer. Your operating comes with these utilities. Okay, you will see here some. I've got here computer management, defrag and optimize, disk cleanup, and there's also recovery, resource monitor, and stuff like that. Okay, so these programs is just basically helping you to analyze, monitor, maintaining your computer. Okay, there are other utilities for the operating system out there, and how you get utilities, it can be downloaded, or you can get it from a CD. Okay, just give me 1 second. Let me just continue. Where was I? Okay, so it can be downloaded, or you can get it from CD drives or DVD drives, etc. Okay, so I talked about some I mentioned and showed you. You get a few like backup software that creates backups of all the files on your computer and save it normally on an external drive, so that if your computer crashes and it deletes all your files, you can just go back to your external drive, get the image of the backup off of your external drive, and you don't lose any files. Okay. It also says here a device manager helps a user install new hardware such as a mouse, USB, etc. Okay. I want to talk about quickly this defragmentation. We saw defragment and optimize. So this is also a utility that is actually very common, what you can do is, if your drive becomes slow, if you've got a hard disk drive in, you can analyze it, and it's going to try and optimize your drive. So what two terms you need to know is defragmented and fragmented. Okay, so what happens is, as that platter spins, basically information and data gets stored onto your hard disk drive on that magnetic platter. Okay, so when a file is deleted, it basically deletes it off of that disk platter, and then if you, let's say, load a new program, it will save the information onto that platter. It's actually much more, I'll explain this in class again. You need to actually look at my hands. But then what happens is, as you install new programs, it basically fills the gaps. So let's say there were only like 5 gig that was deleted, so then it will go fill that 5 gig, but now there is like a huge gap. Let's say another program is then in between, and then it will complete the installation on another part of that drive. And again, I'll explain this in class. You need to look at my hands. Just try to imagine this. So what happens then is, your program is not, all the data and files is not kept together actually. It's on various split up places on your hard disk drive. Okay, to accommodate obviously the installation or saving or whatever. So what then happens is, your hard drive, that disk read-write head, has to go across the whole magnetic platter several times to quickly locate all the pieces, put it in once, and then basically making a puzzle out of it. So after time, if it's very fragmented, means it is one program is over the whole hard drive, pieces everywhere, it's gonna take a long time to get all those pieces back together, put it in the puzzle, and then use the program or files. Okay, what this disk defragmentation utility then does is, it basically just regroups all the files and their pieces, and then put it like right by each other, so that it does not actually have to go search the whole drive for pieces. Then it knows, okay, once it found this, all the other stuff is actually very close by. So that is just an example of this utility software, defragmentation. Okay, then we get device drivers. So what are device drivers? So device drivers are basically software that has instructions to command a computer on how to communicate with hardware. Okay, so basically, if you plug in, let's say, a mouse, okay, you need software which is called a driver to allow the computer to communicate with that mouse. So that is where the drivers comes in. Okay, then it just says installing of devices. So it's okay, here they talk about plug and play. So every time you insert a new hardware into the computer, it basically needs to install that drivers to communicate with it. One type of device is called using plug and play. Okay, so what it means is, as soon as you plug in, let's say, your mouse into the computer, the operating system will basically automatically locate the correct driver in its driver database and install it onto the computer, allowing the computer to communicate with the device without having to reboot it, obviously. Okay, so that is automatic. Okay, you also get a manual driver installation, so that is again not really plug and play. So it means, let's say you insert a graphics card and then you boot it up, and now you see, oh, but it's not working how it should be working. You know, oh, you need to install the driver. Okay, so once you then install the driver, you reboot the computer, it comes back up, and then it will actually load that drivers, and you are able to use the graphics card. Okay, so just a keen one thing to note, where do you get drivers? Okay, so drivers can be downloaded from the internet, or normally you get like a CD with the device that you can just install onto the computer. Okay. With plug and play, there's also another term not mentioned here, which is called hot swappable. Okay. That means when the computer is on, you can actually remove the hardware and you can insert it at any point if the computer is running. Okay, so that is called hot swappable. So if the computer is on, it's hot, you can swap it out. Okay, which is not hot swappable is something like a hard drive or RAM. You have to wait for the computer to be off completely before you can remove a hard drive. If you go and just remove a hard drive, if it's not hot swappable, you can actually corrupt that drive or damage, or well, maybe even electrocute yourself. Okay. So then just again, activity 4.3. And is that all? Yes, and that is all of the theory for today. Okay, so just a quick recap. It was unit 3.5. Just the activity 3.5. We've got unit 4.1, activity 4.1 to be done, and unit 4.2, activity 4.2 to be done, and lastly unit 4.3, activity 4.3 to be done. Okay.